racism doesn't exist.
He has a new book out, just came out a few days ago, called Don't Make the Black Kids Angry, The Hoax of Black Victimization and Those Who Enable It. Colin Flaherty, thank you very much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
An honor to be back, Larry.
Colin, I'm not sure whether you're the most hated man in America or whether I'm the most hated man in America, but neither of us is terribly popular in some quarters.
Yeah, but you know what? Think about. I'm honored you'd make the comparison, but I also know this: for every one person that hates on us, how many people really, really like what you're doing because of your bravery, because you know what you're talking about, and you say it in a very effective way.
Well, Colin, I really appreciate that. Before you came on, I went over the fact that in the last week, Wednesday to Wednesday, 4 officers who happen to be black were killed in the line of duty. One in Philadelphia, one in Prince George's County, one in Baton Rouge, and one was in Fulton County outside of Atlanta. And I tweeted out, Colin, 4 officers down, and where are Messrs. Holder and Sharpton and Obama and Jackson?
Boy, if you find out, let me know. I'm interested in knowing that too.
Now, Colin, you have courageously written about things like the knockout game and these black flash mobs that have been going on. I think I told you when you were last on, I had a conversation with Robin Epkarian of the LA Times, and she accused conservatives of making up the knockout game for ratings and for fun. Your response?
Oh, yeah. You know, I actually wrote a book about that where I listed the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of links I had and videos of the knockout game. So I had a little fun, you know, comparing the people like Robin, like my favorite is the Village Voice. The Village Voice said I was just making it all up. Within 2 weeks, there was a really big viral video within a couple blocks of the Village Voice where a black guy is just standing on the sidewalk. A 72-year-old veteran with cancer is kind of like, you know, stumbling past, and he turns around and knocks him out right on the video. So,
oh my goodness.
You know, it's a question of who are you going to believe, the Village Voice or those lying videos?
You wrote a piece in the American Thinker, Colin, and I put it up on my Twitter file. I have it on Facebook. I also have it on my blog, elderstatement.com. It's called Mob Violence Spreads as President Preaches Victimization in Selma. Tell us about it.
Well, one of the things I notice every day in the paper is this theme of black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere, and that explains everything. I mean, look at Ferguson. But gosh, one day we're talking about racist murderers. The next day we're talking about racist traffic tickets, and it's all seamless. And so I just wanted to kind of make the contrast to the president sitting there talking about relentless black victimization in Selma and Ferguson with what's really happening, this enormous disparity between black crime, white crime, Asian crime, if you want to get really technical about it, and how their narrative just doesn't capture the reality of that. That's
Colin
my
Flaherty,
way of saying they're lying their butts off.
Colin Flaherty's new book is called Don't Make the Black Kids Angry, The Hoax of Black Victimization and Those Who Enable It. And the point of your article was to show within days following the president's Selma speech, you talk about black mob violence and black on white crime all over the country, and you give specific examples. Talk to us about some of the examples.
Well, I kind of give the theme of it is, you know, the black people around the country are not cooperating with the president. He says they're constant victims, but the numbers and the videos show that they're more often predators. And so I have videos of, you know, the favorite one is the big beatdown at Chuck E. Cheese in
Cleveland.
Cleveland, just 48 hours.
Colin, I know that Chuck E. Cheese. I used to live in Cleveland for 17 years. I know exactly where that is.
And it's funny how many videos there are of black mob violence at Chuck E. Cheese. I mean, there's dozens of them at McDonald's, and there's a big one in Florida just from a couple weeks ago. So it's kind of a long list, and you know, I tried to detail a lot of them in the article today.
What is it about Chuck E. Cheese that attracts violence? You talk about Chuck E. Cheese episodes of black mob violence in Long Island, in Florida, in South Carolina, in St. Louis, in Dearborn, in California. Stop me. Memphis, Commack, Beaumont, Colorado Springs, other places. What is it about Chuck E. Cheese that attracts mob violence? Is it the food?
You know, I think, yeah, maybe they're angry. Well, in this particular case, somebody was angry about the the photograph machine was broken. But I don't know. I never know the why. I always just know the how it's happening, not why it's happening.
What about Albany, New York? Something happened at the Armory in Albany. 6 people were stabbed.
6 people were stabbed. There's a reporter in Albany named Seiler. Forget his first name. It's not Casey Seiler. And he was kind of the leader of the pack in saying Flaherty's making this whole business up of racial violence, black mob violence, the knockout game. So in his hometown, there's all sorts of black mob violence. So they had a big concert, a rap concert in this place called the Armory. They tried to shut the Armory down because every time they have a rap concert there, it breaks out into an episode of large-scale black mob violence, as this one did. 6 people were stabbed, a bunch of people were robbed, and that's just what we know about.
And the point is, Colin Flaherty, that these all happened within days of Obama giving us this speech about how much more racial repair we have to do. The Armory took place, I think, the day after Obama's speech. Now, 2 days before his speech, something happened in Queens. 3 black people were stabbed, were slashed with broken bottles at a hip hop concert. Tell us about that.
Well, you pretty much captured it. And the way I like to write these articles is just like kind of go, staccato. It's like boom, 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 boom. Mm-hmm. And there was a large scale episode of black mob violence in Brooklyn, which is, you probably saw the McDonald's tape video out today, another episode in Brooklyn. Right. And this is kind of like the hipster haven now, right? But the cops in New York, they're telling the hipsters moving into Brooklyn, it's like, buyer beware. Do you know where you're living now? You're not living in a place where you can just go anywhere and walk your little doggy at 9 o'clock at night anymore, no matter what you think. There's some really serious racial animosity here. And if you're not aware of it, Brooklyn can be a very dangerous place for the wrong person in the wrong place.
Now, Colin, you mentioned racial animosity. To what degree do you think that people who otherwise might not behave like this are incited, encouraged by the notion that black people are under siege, that the man's out to get you, that cops are out to get you? How much does that affect somebody who might otherwise maybe not be violent to become violent? I know that 2 officers were killed in New York, and on the guy's Facebook page, he posted something about how much he hated cops. And those 2 officers, remember Officers Liu and Ramos, were killed in New York by a guy who apparently was motivated by this notion that black people are being under attack by cops. So how much of the rhetoric from the Holders and the Sharptons and the Jacksons are inducing people to commit violence, Colin, in your opinion?
Listen, there's no doubt, Larry, the chickens are coming home to roost. I mean, there's so many people are preaching this racial division. They're preaching this racial resentment, racial hostility with fairy tales of white racism keeping people down. How could it? I mean, now it's being taught in grade schools, and I have a story in the book about. We document in the book how, a guy named Glenn Singleton has a big company, goes around the country, teaching white, the archetypical white teacher just out of college, a young white female liberal, wants to spread her mojo around all the unfortunate people of the world. They put these people in a room. And they go, we're going to have a courageous conversation. And the courageous part comes from you have to be courageous enough to admit, Mr. or Mrs. Teacher, that you are a racist and that racism is the cause of all this disparity between white people and black people. So there's this racial hostility is an industry now, Larry.
Colin Flaherty's book is called Don't Make the Black Kids Angry, The Hoax of Black Victimization and Those Who Enable It. Colin, when I was growing up, there was a park called Sportsman's Park. It's now called Jesse Owens Park. It's in Inglewood. And there were record hops every Saturday. Very popular. There'd be hundreds of kids showing up there. And every now and then there would be violence, but rarely was there violence. I believe that the reason for the lack of violence in those days is because almost everybody came from a 2-parent household. Today, fast forward, 75% of black kids come from single-parent households. It was Obama who said it, that a kid raised without a dad is 5 times more likely to be poor, 9 times more likely to drop out, 20 times more likely to end up in prison. So I think that we ought to be talking about that number as opposed to the percentage of people living in Ferguson versus the percentage of Ferguson blacks who are engaged, who are stopped by the police. We ought to be talking about the implosion of the black family and how this is causing so many young black men to look at the police as villains, as enemies.
Well, Larry, you must not have gotten the memo that fathers aren't important anymore, because I remember when Dan Quayle said that. Remember how he was so
Oh yeah,
roundly scorned? And
Murphy
now,
Brown.
so I can't tell if you and I are, if we're like anachronistic for saying that, or if we're like forward thinking for saying that. It's one of the two, right?
Well, Obama said it. That's why I quoted him. And I've also quoted Tupac Shakur, that well-known neocon, who once said, I wish I had had a father. If I had had a father, I would have been more disciplined and I would have been more confident. End of quote.
Yeah, it's weird to have to state the obvious so much when it comes to race, but that's where we are. We have to go around convincing people that fathers are important. Well, okay. That's
Now,
where
Colin,
we are.
I want to ask you this before you go. Your book is a bombshell. This is the kind of book that makes a lot of people feel uncomfortable. I'm sure you've been invited on today's show. I'm sure you've been invited on the Good Morning America show. I'm sure you've been invited on the usual shows where somebody like you, who's got an important book, is able to talk about his book and hopefully influence the debate. So tell me about all the wonderful invitations you've gotten to talk about your book.
Well, I'll tell you what, it is a little strange when I turn on the Today Show. I mean, the people that go on these shows, they always have one message, which is Black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere, and that explains everything. And there's really very, very rarely do you get any pushback on that. And so, but here's what I am doing. So I'm not waiting on Matt Lauer to figure it out. But what I am doing is I'm working my YouTube channel, my email, my Facebook, my Twitter. So I'm kind of growing my own audience, my own tribe, and they're really aggressive about spreading the message. And that's why the book is selling so well. That's why people are passing it around.
Well, you are simply saying things that people are saying behind closed doors because they want to be polite. I was talking about interracial black-white violence one time, and we're talking about murders and attempted murders, manslaughter, rape, aggravated assault, assault with a weapon. About 775,000 such acts took place in recent years per year, and 90% of them, Colin, involve a black perp and a white victim, only 10% the other way around.
Yeah, and that's really an important fact. I really, that's what when people talk about race, white people are so unused to it. I really encourage them just to talk about facts. Don't get into biology or theology or sociology, psychology. Just say this happened, that happened. These numbers are true. We don't have to explain things. We just have to say what the heck is going on and why are so many people in such denial about it, especially reporters.
Well, I can answer that if that wasn't rhetorical. The answer is reporters are left-wing because the answer really, Colin, is public policy has caused women now to marry the government and men to abandon their financial and moral responsibility. That's what we've done with the welfare state. So if that's true, that means every reporter that pulled that lever for Democrats in the last 50 years has to look at himself or herself in the face and say, I screwed up. I need to change course. They don't want to do that. They can't do that. That's called cognitive dissonance. They won't do it, Colin.
And luckily for everybody in the country, we don't have to wait around for them to figure it out. We've got you on your microphone, you in your books, you spreading the message out there. You influenced a lot of people, including myself, very deeply. So I congratulate you. And you know what? I don't even care. I'd rather be on your show, once a month than be on Matt Lauer every morning. I don't even care about those clowns.
Well, Colin, as you know, I do my show on the web now for the last 3 months. I got fired from KBC on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, I broadcast because I saw it coming. I've got so much more freedom right now. I have so much more control over my content, more control over my guests, more control over the breaks, a lot less clutter, a lot less crap in the show, a lot less density in the show in terms of commercials. It's a much better show, and I can have on people like you and not have to get permission from anybody, and can keep you on as long as I want, and you can come on as often as you want. I have much more control now, Colin.
Well, it's really a terrific model, and I bet your listeners enjoy it more too because it's a much closer connection with them. And and that's what your advertisers are going to respond to as well. So, man, I wish I had as many listeners. That's for sure.
Well, Colin, little steps, you'll get there. Colin Flaherty's new book is called Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. His last book was another bombshell called White Girl Bleed a Lot. Real quickly, Colin, tell us why you called the first book White Girl Bleed a Lot.
Well, it was a story out of Milwaukee, another center of racial violence. People are always surprised to hear that. They go into 50 to 100 black kids go into a convenience store on video. They loot it, beat up the clerks. go to a little park, see a couple of white kids, beat the stuffing out of them. At one point, a black woman stands on top of a white woman, points to the ground, and laughingly says to her friends, "White girl bleed a lot."
Wow. Colin Flaherty, the book is called Don't Make the Black Kids Angry, The Hoax of Black Victimization and Those Who Enable It. It just came out a few days ago, so get it while you can. Colin, thank you very much for coming on.
All the best, Larry.
Upon a midnight clear, a 500 juvenile fight. It happened every week this year, a chocolate city night. There's some who say they won't live here, but they're racist and too uptight. The citizens all hide in fear, a chocolate city night. The public subway is suicide, a criminal's delight. Make peace with God, don't go outside, a chocolate city night. But you be safe as long as you don't stop at a traffic light. Upstanding citizens cower and cry, a chocolate city night.
Please, sir, I want some more.